Greetings to you viewers from across the globe. You're welcome to the show, Viewpoint, where we discover perspectives and embrace dialogue. I'm your host, Odiawa AI. You will do well to follow us across various social media platforms and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Veegil Media. And don't forget to subscribe to our Google apps and also the Veegil app on the Apple App Store. Now, it's the Yuletide season, and I do believe you're having a fun-filled Friday on the first day of December. Happy New Month to you out there, actually. And it's going to be a case of the streets of urban cities or rural areas being plagued with the Yuletide colors of red, white, and green. And the children also should be yearning for Santa Claus. Now, on the show today, not to spoil your mood, but we will be talking about the Nigerian Prison Service. Now, not just the institution alone, but also the inmates. We'll actually be talking about dislodging and reforming the prisons as it affects the inmates and also the institution itself and its staff in question. Now, frankly speaking, to err is human, but going against established laws of the land anywhere or taking laws into one's own hands, it's pretty much constitutionally undefined. As much as if one is definitely not above the law, no one is actually. One must be prepared to be answerable to the law considering his or her actions, which is not welcomed in any civil society. But what actually happens when one is set up and falsely accused and is made to do time in a correctional facility for a number of sentenced years or served capital punishment? Well, to squint a keen eye on this, there was a recent decision by the Minister for Interior of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, by that I mean Olubunmi Tunji Ojo, to actually release 4,000. Now, Olubunmi Tunji Ojo actually was of the view that 4,608 inmates were to be released. Now, they have actually served various jail terms or were maybe convicted with an option of fine, which they couldn't meet up. Now, this category were initially released, I beg your pardon. Now, seriously speaking, this would signal the commencement of a definitive program to finally decongest the Nigeria's correctional centers. The minister actually, in my view, in my opinion, should champion the national effort and engage the judiciary and federal and state governments to dislodge the custodial facilities of those who would not be there and revamp the entire system. We've got so many other institutions in place, which of course the state governors and the chief executive, by that I mean the president, can actually exercise. We have the prerogative of mercy. Now, speaking at a medium security custodial center in Kuje, the FCT, Abuja, the minister noted that the facilities, which had the capacity of about 50,000 persons, currently housed approximately 80,804 inmates, significantly exceeding their limits and prompting the strategic intervention. Now, he said, and I quote, "The release is targeting inmates with fines and compensations not exceeding 1 million naira. That definitely means their fines must have been lesser, not above 1 million naira. Extends a lifeline primarily to actually indigents unable to settle their dues, allowing them a second chance at freedom." Now, I think that should be a step in the right direction. Because if we look at it, each individual who has been, incarcerated or imprisoned is entitled to a particular, should I say, fixed fee to be taken care of. We have those in the Western world or developing nations. They're actually being taken care of and catered for very well. But seriously, the case is not here or the same here in Nigeria, because data provided by the Nigerian Correctional Service as at 2021 showed that the correctional centers altogether have the capacity to hold 50,083 inmates. But currently, they hold 70,056 inmates. Now, the World Prison Brief in 2021 also estimated that the official capacity of Nigeria's prison system as 50,153, and which is the actual population, including pretrial detainees, at 81,134, an occupancy rate of 136.7%, which is quite alarming. Truth be told, many factors actually contribute to this overpopulation. For instance, some members of the police force are fond of actually arbitrarily arresting and obtaining custodial orders from unquestioning lower court judges. Also, you have a judiciary system which is snail-paced. They are so slow. This snail-paced justice system in the nation results in an increased number of people awaiting trial or awaiting judgment. Now, also, another factor contributing to it is the shortage of judges or attorneys who are on the japa spree, looking for greener pastures, actually. Now, it also stems the speedy conveyance of justice, because you keep on waiting and documentation concerning detainees are piling up, and there's a backlog, and detainees can be released. Now, that is something people need to wine and dine about, like I always say on my show. Now, about 70% of the nation's total prisons population is made up of inmates doing time without being sentenced, according to the Nigerian Correctional Service, the NCS. Now, similarly, the shabby and shoddy investigation of criminal cases actually carried out by law enforcement agencies results in many innocent persons being locked up in prison custody. And invariably, it causes criminal cases to be delayed for years. And when I mean years here, no jokes, I'm talking 1 decade, 2 decades, or probably 3 decades. Now, CSO on another part are not excluded, as they also cite the overuse of prison sentences by judges. Because the difficult bailing system, actually it's very difficult. You walk into a law enforcement institution, they say bail is free, but when in fact it's not free, because if we be told the truth, even in Freetown, Sierra Leone, nothing is actually free. And also the reluctance of some magistrates to grant bail to inmates, even for, bailable offenses. I mean, there used to be a song back then where they would say, food no day, water, and of course basic necessities are not available. Now, poor man, or my local parlance, it's a case of poor man with thief Maggie, you go see him face for crime fighter. If you remember an investigative show back then on one of the TV stations of years ago. Now, rich man who takes billions, you won't see his face on crime fighter. You will definitely see them still in, practically well cushioned and taken care of. But I don't know whether the case is still operating as we speak now today. Now, despite the change in the name, because recently the name of the prison services was actually changed to the Nigerian Correctional Service now. Now, despite this change, overcrowding, as far as I'm concerned, in my own view, my own opinion, is the impediment actually making them not to function effectively. Now, overcrowding is an impediment to achieving the standard of the minimum rules for treatment of prisoners adopted by the United Nations in 2015. Now, this is what they have also observed. Now, when you have a cluster of people in a particular place, the body itself emits or oozes out all sorts of gastric gases. And oftentimes it's offensive to the nasal organ. Now, you imagine people who haven't had their bath for a very long time, and yet still they are supposedly being taken care of. Now, I was discussing with a friend earlier on, and we went down memory lane, and he made me understand that even in the US as we speak, the Naira equivalent, a prisoner is entitled to 1,500 Naira. Now, that is the operational faculty when it comes to privatization of correctional facilities. We are still going to delve into that. Now, Nigeria now, a prisoner is entitled to 15,000 Naira stipend. But how effective? Because when we see these prisoners being released, they are hungry looking. Actually, refugees are even better than them, or internally displaced persons are practically even better than them. Most Nigerian prisons actually were built many decades ago, and they have not been actually modernized or refurbished to meet the increasing population of detainees. The facilities are therefore too small for the number of offenders, and being built decades ago, the Nigerian prison structure probably has become weak. Hence, the prisons breaks in recent times. If we recall, as at 2020, the recent breaks, and there were palliatives being shared at that point in time. We had warehouses being broken into. We've also had prisons being busted. Actually, let me put it that way, or prison breaks. And we begin to ask ourselves some questions. How strong is the concrete? How strong are those bars which are actually caging these incarcerated detainees? Definitely, they would have been weakened. Iron is prone to rust. Cement is prone to cracks over time if it is not well maintained. Now, it is not also changing the name, like I will say, or I earlier on said, or any other institution of government. In my own opinion, it's a total waste of funds or resources. I mean, definitely, there will be need to change the new headed paper. Now, also, the logo also will need to be changed also. We need to look at all that. I mean, when all these are replaced and a whole lot of items, it will be running into millions and billions, in which we hear these days on televised broadcasts. Because if it was carrying a Nigerian Prison Service before, on a letter-headed paper, on a new letter-headed paper, you would definitely need to replace the Nigerian Prison Service with the Nigerian Correctional Service. And when replacing all this, you're not just replacing it for Abuja. You're replacing it for the whole 36 states. And you don't expect to make only one copy. You're meant to make multiple copies. And all these things are just running into millions and billions, like I just said. Now, frankly speaking, the specific impediment, obstacle, or hurdle, which is overcrowding, needs to be addressed. It needs to be dealt with. Now, in the case of impediments, obstacles, or hurdles, which is overcrowding, like I just said, and the factors leading to this overcrowding, which I mentioned earlier on in the initial inception of this show, such as the shabby or shoddy investigations of criminal cases, or a snail-based justice system, and a whole lot, they must be actually effectively handled by appropriate authorities. Consequently, the sole aim of the correction facilities is to positively reform prisoners. And this reforming of prisoners has actually been defeated. Why? Because of the excess acceptance of inmates. Now, instead, many offenders who were soft become hard. Those who were hard actually become hardened criminals in these toxic cells. They become more enmeshed in crimes and baptize themselves into joining brutal gangs during and after their stay in prison. We watch movies. And we see what actually obtains there. All sorts of harmful objects, knives, bombs, all these things are slipped into the prison yard. And the prison warders, what exactly are they doing to checkmate all these things? These are the things that even facilitate or fast track or aid prison breaks. Now, the entire prison system therefore requires a holistic reforms geared more towards reforming inmates and making them shy away from crime. Fine, we agree, as the good book will say, out of the evil is born out of the heart, or out of the abundance of the mouth speaketh. We don't know the intentions of people. But if the system itself is not even corrupt enough, it will not influence people into doing ills. Now, there should be a devolution of a prison system where states can build and manage prisons as it was in the First Republic. And not just building them, making sure that they are conducive enough to reform the inmates that is actually being apprehended. Now, under strict regulations and oversight, private organizations should be allowed to operate correctional facilities as we see in developed nations. Now, according to the U.S. National Library of Medicine, with various degrees of privatization by 2013, 12 countries, including the US, the United States, England, SA, as we all call it in abbreviation, South Africa, Brazil and Chile, allowed the operation of private prisons. And these private prisons, we can see that they are well taken care of, judging from the arrests they make on the news, or even from movies in which we watch. Even up to the food they eat, they are well taken care of. Because, I mean, we can see our prisoners here, the poor maintenance, juxtaposingly, you weigh them side by side. You see a foreign prison, and then you now see our own prison. Now, take a look at it. Some years ago, a particular African actually found himself in the UK rather. And when he found himself in the UK, he loved to commit crime, petty crimes, knowing that he will be picked up. Upon being picked up, arrested, he's locked up. Now, when he's being locked up, he's catered for. Why? Because he preferred to live in a prison than live on the streets. Meaning that even the streets of that developed nation is better than his own home country where they don't cater for him. Now, we place them side by side, a foreign prison and our prison system here. I mean, it's more lounging over there. I'm not saying, or I'm not like, pushing criminals to continue doing ills in the society. Definitely not, no. Only that people who find themselves doing ills should also be catered for if actually the correctional facility needs to be actually reformed. The inmate needs to also be reformed, and the environment in which that inmate finds himself needs to be conducive enough for he or she to be reformed. Specialized courts also should be expanded and new ones set up to ensure speedy trials and justice delivery should be as quick as possible. Now, the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019, which empowers state controllers to reject intakes of the facilities under their control, are full and mandates the separation of correctional and non-correctional sentencing, which should be fully implemented. Now, it is on that note that inmates and the correctional facility also should actually be catered for by the government. Now, when I mean the government, I'm talking from the federal and also the state level. Because much attention is oftentimes shifted to only one institution of government. I'm not saying the government isn't doing enough. Definitely they are trying. Multitasking, I mean. But more needs to be done. I'm Odiawa AI for Veegil Media, and the show has been Viewpoint, where we discover perspectives and embrace dialogue. You will do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Veegil Media, and follow us across various social media platforms. Don't forget to download the app on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Thanks for watching.